On to the latest in the SMS series Strategy Imagination Forum. This one titled, "Isn't it time we practice what we preach?" I've been looking forward to for a while. Our host for the session is Ithai Stern from INSEAD. Ithai, as many of you know, has spent a career studying behavior strategy at the individual, also at the firm level. He's got a strong scholarly record in various journals, but also, in addition to that, he himself and his work has been featured in various practitioner outlets over the years as well. And finally, he's a terrific teacher, acknowledged as an innovator in the classroom and someone who's received various teaching awards, including our own SMS Educational Impact Award. He's assembled a great group here for the panel, and in just a moment, Ithai will introduce everyone. But before getting to that discussion, just a word on the SMS framework, the 6 big questions, the big 6 we call it. It's a framework that underlies the SIF, the Strategy Imagination Forums. And we developed this over the past few years. The idea was to categorize the issues that are being discussed in various boardrooms of different organizations around the world. We wanted to articulate what are the important issues that are at the crossroads, the intersection between theory and practice. We hope everyone here in this session will have a chance to look at the big 6, maybe provide feedback. We hope that it'll help us better connect 2 communities that are important to each other and for society at large, the group of academics, but also practitioners. You can find the description of the Big 6 on the SMS website. If you go to the main first page, look for Strategic Insights, and in that area of the website, you'll see a description of the Big 6, how we describe them, but also a little bit of the history of how they came to be. Now, this webinar likely and could potentially touch on all of the big 6 questions. This is a broad topic we're about to address, but it's particularly relevant, I think, to question 5. I'll read question 5 for us. How do organizations balance the need for innovation and growth with efficiency concerns and business model constraints? And of course, the industry here that we're going to speak to is the educational sector, management, scholarship, as well as teaching. With that, let me introduce Ithai. Ithai, I think you may be on mute. Not yet.
How about now?
Yep.
So sorry, we have a...
Oh.
Sorry, we had some technical issues before. Can you still hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. When I joined in, it actually joined the whole system. So sorry for that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As you said, we are going to discuss today whether it's time for us to practice a little bit what we preach. I want to start by acknowledging and thanking all of the different panelists, and I'll introduce them more properly as they will come into the panel. I'm sure you know all of them. Allow me to actually get into trying to explain a little bit why we said, or why is it so important for me, I think, that to encourage all of our community to start to practice what we preach. And what do I mean by this? We are working in an industry where we, on a daily basis, try to encourage our students, our executive participants in different programs to disrupt the industries within which they are working. And yet we are working in an industry that hasn't really been disrupted at least not by ourselves. It might be disrupted as we are right now, these days, by other players. You could, in the last year alone, the big consulting firms have generated probably almost as much revenue from executive education as business schools do. McKinsey itself, and on the McKinsey Academy, actually proudly says that they have already trained over 1 million participants in executive education. This is a big, player within the business and management education field. Companies themselves have their own universities. Again, if you go in and you look at the Disney Institute as just one example, where you can actually choose different executive education classes. It's not only for them, you yourself can even join. And then, of course, there are all kinds of platform and edtech company. edX is only one example out of many. What I'm trying to say here is that I feel that we've been a little bit asleep, that we've been telling everyone to disrupt their industries, but we are working in an industry that hasn't really been disrupted ever. When you think about it, we are teaching in the very same ways in which we have taught hundreds of years ago. It used to be a person teaching other people by drawing figures or lines on the sand or then on the board. Now we do it on a beautiful PowerPoint presentation, but it's essentially the same. It's a very passive way in which you have the provider of knowledge and the observant of knowledge who is supposed to sit there and in a very passive one-way type of approach observe knowledge. The problem with that is that we know that this really doesn't work. If you remember 2 weeks after you've been to a lecture, 20% of what you've heard in that lecture, that was probably an amazing lecture and on a topic that's close to your heart. Of course, one big difference here, or one big exception here, is the cases that and the case method that we've been using in business schools for many years. But with all due respect, that's also been already about 100 years old kind of method. Can't we do things even better than that? Now, what is it that we do in cases? In cases, what we try to do is to expose students to real-life situations. We ask them to imagine themselves as protagonists in cases. And we know that this works much better than just regular lectures. It allows them to be much more active. The more active, the more immersed, the more experiential the learning experience is, the more knowledge that people retain, and the greater the impact and the effectiveness of the class. But again, 100 years with issues of its own. As someone who has been doing a lot of behavioral strategy in his teaching, I do have a problem where it's really hard through cases to try to convey subtle dilemmas and nuances, to bring in human interactions, human emotions, human tensions between people when you talk about when we talk about strategy in the class, and specifically strategic decision making. People who, when you talk about boardrooms, how can you do corporate governance type of courses without bringing all of those rich settings of the boardroom, where there are tensions, where are there emotions? Then, of course, we have the issue of compliance. We all know that executives don't really read those long cases, that MBAs are reading them less and less. Anyone who has ever been in front of a classroom where you realize in the first 2 minutes that very few people read the case, and then what do you do with this? And then, of course, engagement, which is becoming more and more difficult. And we used to say every year that the attention span of our students is decreasing. I think that what's happening these days, they actually come into the university without an attention span whatsoever. So how do you actually compare, and how you can actually address all of these? How do you can bring down go down this pyramid that I'm presenting to you? I'm sure that many of you know that we actually increase the impact and effectiveness of teaching. I think there are different technologies of doing this. I'm very thankful to the panel today that's going to talk about different ways in which they are doing it. I'm going to take 3-4 minutes of your time to present how I've been doing that at INSEAD. And I think that what we're doing here, and I really love, is to share those practices as a community with one another, to be able to help one another to actually do things a little bit better than how we've done them so far, and innovate, and in so doing, defend our own turfs in the industry, and essentially practice what we preach. One of the ways in which we've been doing that is in INSEAD is by turning many of the written case studies that we've been using into VR experiences. Instead of asking people to imagine themselves as protagonists in cases, we actually make them the protagonist within the case. They are in the virtual reality with the headsets on for a couple of minutes, once or twice or three times in a classroom. They take it during a session, they take it on and off, and we have different type of exchanges and conversations. But that provides with a lot of different benefits. People, by being immersed, by feeling that they are present in the actual situation, they observe much more, they learn by doing. We ask them to make mistakes, we lead them the path of mistakes, then we discuss them in the classroom, they go back in time, they go back in space, and they can redo it again. We get their undivided attention. One of the things that we didn't plan originally, but ended up being one of the best, the important benefits of using virtual reality in the classroom is that when students are in the headsets, they are yours. You're not competing with any other distractions like iPhones and tablets and whatever it might be. Some people think that it's expensive to do. To be honest, it's actually cost effective. I have a friend in operations, for example, that instead of taking his students on buses to see how lean operation is done in the real world, they do it now all over virtual reality. We bring the world into the classroom. For a headset that costs around 300 euros for a headset, we actually managed to save a lot of different expenses, and I can expand if that ever becomes an issue. We can use, until now, we have tried to work around, especially in executive education, to customize programs to specific clients. Here we can do it for the specific person. Each person, thanks to technology, can actually experience a different case. Cases adapt themselves in virtual reality according to the behavior, according to the decisions of the specific person. And finally, there's a lot of data that we are actually capturing throughout the experience. We know where people look, we know how they behave, we analyze it, and we provide that feedback back to them in real time in the classroom, which allows them to reflect, change, and learn as they go. So I'm telling you all of this because the idea here, and it's not the first time that I'm actually approaching the SMS community to join in this process. We have produced a huge library of digital content. You are more than welcome, of course, to go and take a look at it, the INSEAD XR library. But as much as we have done here, it's clear to all of us that we want to be able to really change as business schools the way in which we all teach and take it into the next step on our own. This is a huge undertaking, and to be able to do this, we need to do it as a community. So please, we have built a portal that will allow different schools to download and upload digital content to be able to use in your teaching. And this is an invitation for everyone to join this community. So with that said, just a short video before we go on to talk about other innovations from our panelists.
These are fundamentally path-breaking technologies that offer a new medium through which we communicate information.
It is a different way of learning. It's much more real life than the traditional case studies. What I found very valuable is the multitude of information that was available if we go and look for it.
The case very cleverly taught us how to analyze different information points, make a complex decision, and work well in a group.
I use VR in my class. Students are much more engaged than just using the traditional way of teaching. They were able to understand more in depth the concepts that we have learned.
I would really appreciate your take on this.
The research side is so important to have a community of scholars bringing together teaching and research in extended reality.
INSEAD has made it really easy to start applying this in the classroom. There are lots of tools, content, techniques that will help me start dabbling and adopting these technologies to further my educational goals.
So with that, again, thank you everyone for listening to how we are doing this. And with that said, I want to invite everyone who is interested in joining, please get in touch with me or through the portal. And that said, it is with really great, sorry. It doesn't, here we go. Sorry. And it's with great pleasure that I want to introduce our panelists one by one. I want to give each one of them a few minutes to present what they've been doing. A lot of it is actually in the realm of artificial intelligence, AI. I think that we are going to see a convergence of the different technologies that we are presenting here today, VR, XR, AI, and others in the classroom in business schools in the next couple of years. The first one that we're really privileged is Isabelle, the Dean of the Tepper Business School at Carnegie Mellon University. Isabelle, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to stop sharing in a minute and allow you to share yours. But to save time, after you, we'll have a presentation from Raj from HBR, presenting some of the innovations that he has initiated and some of the things that they are doing at HBR. Then we have David from Imperial College in London. David is known to be one of the big innovators in our field, introducing a lot of different innovations into the classroom in the last many years. I won't say even how many to make sure that he doesn't feel too old. And then, of course, we have Sven, and Sven comes from a very interesting background, and he will introduce himself from Globis University that tries to approach business education a little bit different than the mainstream. So with all of that said, Isabelle, I have just stopped sharing my screen. I'll shut up, I'll mute myself, and I'm very curious to hear how you've been doing it at Tepper.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ithai, for the very kind introduction. And I'm really thrilled to be here today and share with you some of the approaches that we've been using at Tepper, in particular about AI, and sharing, shaping how AI is shaping the experience of our students in the classroom. So next slide. So at Tepper, we really strive to integrate artificial intelligence in every single facet of our curriculum. In that spirit, we do offer a number of courses to both our undergraduate and our master's students that are focused on AI, not only as a subject of discussion, but really as an interactive learning, leveraging all of the AI tools. And what I'd like to do is to mention 3 different examples from 3 different professors at Tepper. So my first example is about a communication course that is offered to undergraduate students. The course itself is using AI tools to generate ideas, research strategies, and draft and revise text. Professor Bajeux and our colleagues designed a team project where students explore AI applications across different industries. The students are forming some consulting teams, and then they choose a company. These are real companies that are participating in the classroom. The students analyze the company's existing AI strategy. They propose enhancements. It is really unique as it integrates the use of generative AI tools at every stage of the communication process. At the end of the project, each team is able to provide a real-world company with a snapshot of where the company stands with their current AI use compared to their competitors. The teams then identified gaps in their strategies and offered improvements to utilize AI for more efficiency. My next example is coming from our Managing and Teams course that is taught by Professor Woolley. In the fall of 2023, Professor Woolley and a PhD student developed an LLM-powered web application to help students learn OB concepts in a very interactive way. The students use the app to conduct virtual interviews for employee annual reviews. So very practical problem that was addressed here. The platform simulates different personas, allowing the students to interact in real time with these different personas. It does provide the students with a unique opportunity to try different strategies and interact with different personality traits. The students are then evaluated depending on how they conduct these interviews. I'd like to mention one thing that Professor Woolley is saying now is that she doesn't think she'll ever use cases in her classroom anymore because the experience that she had with these simulations was way more powerful. The third example is from Professor Rutledge's classes that is has been focusing on using AI smartly and safely in business in a responsible way. In these different courses that he's been teaching, students developed AI business models using a mix of technical and business components. There was a lot of different examples, but some of the examples include working with the Defense Department, building a travel assistant, working on building codes, and an AI assistant to help with dementia patients. So all of these examples were really about experiential learning and about students working on these particular projects. So what are the benefits of using AI in the classrooms? The first one I would mention is that utilizing AI allows us to offer a way more interactive experience for students in the classroom as we can develop more simulation tools. Really, at the end, as AI improves the student's experience, it is about a more immersive environment for the students. And at the end, it could altogether eliminate the need for case studies. So that's something that I already mentioned, but I think it links with your introduction, Ithai, about case studies being kind of an old technology that we're using in the classroom. The other piece is that by definition, a case study is something that already happened and it's not a live case. And as technology is changing so fast, I feel that the importance of using live cases in the classroom becomes more and more important. However, I should say AI tools are not perfect. We do need to continue to teach algorithms, in particular, how to learn and improve. which our faculty are actively doing. And as we continue to develop AI, we do need heavy monitoring of the behavior of the tools. We all know about biases that they can introduce. AI in academia and business is happening anyway. The challenge is really how we teach our students to better leverage the skills to use AI in an efficient and an ethical way. I would also say that universities are traditionally slow movers, so keeping curriculum relevant in the very fast-paced world of AI is a challenge. We need to close the gap between different generations, and that's another challenge. Our students are very technologically literate, while some of our faculty members are not always. It's important that we pay attention to closing that gap as AI tools continue to evolve. What are the lessons learned? I will say it again, AI tools are not perfect. Anything that is generated from AI needs to be fact-checked, and those tools need continuous improvement. We need to continue to update curriculum and degree formats to satisfy changing student needs. We're really just at the beginning of AI applications in academia and business. And more than ever, collaboration between the two has become most important. What is the future of AI in the classroom? I strongly believe that AI will bring a more experiential learning experience to our students. At the same time, not all business schools will be able to keep up with the rapid pace of evolving AI, and some of them might be left behind. I'm really interested to see how that evolves over time. And I personally trust that the Tepper School of Business will continue to be at the forefront of technology and AI development. So thank you so much for your time. And back to you, Ithai.
Isabelle, thank you very, very much. With that said, I want to move on. Thank you. And Raj, I think that you're next.
Thank you, Ithai. Let me just share my slides. Can you see the slides? So thanks, Ithai, for organizing this session and for inviting me. My name is Raj Choudhury, and a small correction. I'm an associate professor at the Harvard Business School, HBS, not HBR. So I guess I'm going to take my time to just talk about two innovations. I don't know if we can call them innovations, but one thing we've done in the classroom that I shared with Ithai, and that's probably why I got the invitation, and then just one thought based on my own research for what a future innovation might look like. So the thing that we sort of discussed, Ithai and I, a few months back now, was this case study that was developed by Clay Christensen, and then it was taught by Clay, Rory McDonald, my colleague, and myself in this course called BSSC, where we essentially take the bull by its horns, and we ask the question, will the MBA program be disrupted? And we teach it to second-year MBAs. Of course, they get defensive about this question. And the context we share is the emergence of corporate universities, such as Apple University, where, of course, a very, very senior faculty members such as Joel Podolny, and now I believe the current dean is the ex-provost from Brown University, and they have been teaching successfully for several years. But also in parallel, there's been the emergence of the University of Phoenix model. And so we essentially debate in the classroom for 90 minutes that in the face of this two-pronged sort of like disruption, one from the corporates, and Ithai mentioned McKinsey's Institute, but also from the bottom up with the University of Phoenix model, what's going to happen to the future business school and the MBA program? And we have a pretty spirited debate, which I'll summarize in a minute. But I think that debate is, and the implications of that debate, I would argue, is already playing out. So the University of, the Guy's Business School IMBA was awarded by Poets and Quants, the MBA program for the year in 2022. And I know we don't have time to read this entire graphic. Poets and Quants essentially praised the way the program was structured, that you could take one course at a time, could come back and do a course later. So there was a lot of flexibility in how the programming could be set up. And of course, this was mostly done online. And then in Purdue's previously Krannert School, that's now called the Daniels School, they have a completely online MBA. And I think the enrollment numbers, since they went from in-person to online, has just increased quite impressively. So, the MSMBA number is the gray bar, and as you can see, the gray bar enrollment numbers have been climbing. And so I think one thing that we debate in the classroom is how the incumbents, the traditional business schools, can now move online. And we talk about HBS experiment with that, which is the HBX. And there is a spirited discussion there saying, can a student from the external world take one little course with HBX and then claim that they have done a business school degree from Harvard, which is, of course, something that the 2-year MBAs don't like because they've spent 2 years getting that same affiliation. So there's a very spirited debate. And then in that context, what we share in the classroom is how HBS's own thinking on this topic has changed. So Dean Nitin Noria in 2014 said that, when he first became dean, he thought that online education and HBS would never come together. And that thinking has now changed completely, with HBX being very much part of the HBS offering. And it says, I think one of the stated principles is HBX must complement and enhance the on-campus offerings. And the current dean, Shrikant, actually teaches in HBX himself. So that's been quite a journey for HBS. So to summarize what typically happens in class, we use the Clay Christensen disruptive framework, and we argue that 3 things are happening. First, the y-axis, and for folks who know Clay's framework, the y-axis is how you measure performance, is changing. Initially, it was probably the quality of the MBA education, and now it's turning into convenience and customization. And so I think, we all need to collectively sort of be cognizant that the performance axis, what the customers, i.e. MBA students, are demanding as performance, is changing. And then we have a low-end disruption from the University of Phoenix. And then we have a completely new, what Clay would call new market disruption happening with the corporate universities, which are targeting more experiential, more customized, more targeted education. So I think this is a case that, anyone in the audience could use, and it's a good trigger point for thinking about what would the future MBA look like. Now, I'm just going to take the remainder of my time, a few minutes, to think through another possible innovation that could happen. And, for folks who know my research, I study the future of work. So I study both the geography of work and how AI and machine learning is changing work. But in geography, one topic I've thought about for a long time is how immigration restricts the flow of students and even faculty. So most recently in the UK, for instance, there has been new policy saying that the students cannot bring their partners. And this is a headline from this year where the Forbes is saying this is a major blow to the UK universities. And immediately we see a reaction where the London Business School has now launched a 1-year master's program, being cognizant that students would rather be away from their partners for a year than 2 years, among other reasons in why this program was launched. And, I've talked about this in my research. In an annals piece, I've talked about the challenges of moving across borders. And there is a new phenomena which I'm really, really excited about in studying in the corporate world, where organizations are now shunning offices altogether. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of startups which have said we don't need physical offices anymore. And I've studied a few of them like Zapier and Doist and GitLab, but there are thousands of such organizations. Instead, what these companies do is they periodically meet at retreats, at offsites. So instead of having people come to an office every week, they are saying, we will organize our in-person time at a retreat, at an offsite. And I have actually some research with my INSEAD colleagues, Victoria Shevchenko and Sujin Zhang and Charles Ayubi on this. So here's one thought for the future. And I know there's at least one dean in the audience. What if, and this is the offsite that we studied for Zapier, what if we think about a future world where at least, maybe a new business school or some of the incumbent programs in the spirit of Purdue and guys go complete officeless, and the in-person time, instead of being organized for 12 months straight up or 24 months straight up, is organized as a burst, a few sequence of retreats that happen maybe once a quarter for a week. And that's when all the social bonding and the networking happens. And the rest of the program is done in the spirit of what Ithai mentioned, online, using VR, AR tools, or just asynchronous teaching. So could we imagine a campus-less MBA program in the future as a future innovation? So I'll stop there more as a question and to stimulate some thought. Thank you so much.
Raj, thank you very, very much. And again, apologies from mispronouncing the name of the school. You can see why maybe some of us, including me, should be replaced by AI. And that's a wonderful way to move onwards for David, who would probably tell me why I should be replaced with AI. Please, David.
Yep. Certainly, that's certainly not my intention, Ithai, but thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk today. I'm David Lefevre. I sit in the Imperial College Business School. We have a range of initiatives at this school, but I'm not going to talk about that today. We've only got 5 minutes. I'm going to give a sort of personal view on this question of should schools disrupt themselves. So I'm just going to give like a personal lens on this. And I think one way to think about this question is, well, why should schools disrupt themselves? What's the end game that they would arrive at should they do so? And so I spend some of my time thinking about, well, what's the possible end game in 10 years' time? So if schools did invest or didn't invest, where would they end up and what would they do differently? And I think Raj spoke about the future of work, and I think one lens in which you can view the adoption of AI is a split between work being split between human workers and AI workers. So AIs and humans working alongside each other. And I think when you think about the possible end games for schools in 10 years' time, I think it's interesting to think about a spectrum, and I use 1 to 5. So number 1 being that schools don't adopt AI, highly unlikely, but maybe suited to certain specialist scenarios. And then you move along the spectrum, increasing the level of AI adoption. So if we move on to stage 1, for example, stage 1 would be we essentially do what we do now, but we all operate with AI assistance. And I think we've seen some examples of that today. This is where we continue teaching in the classroom, but we have AI assistants in the classroom with us giving feedback to students. Or we use AIs to develop curriculum, etc. So this is kind of stage 1, I think, where we all operate with AI assistants. And I think we can see that future already. As you move along the spectrum, you increase the level of AI automation. So you increase the level of automation to the point that level 5 is that the AIs are doing all the work. So this is the spectrum that we have in mind. And my personal interest is in the more automated education. And this isn't because I think all schools will end up there. It's just where I'm personally interested in exploring the possibilities of that. And so I'm looking into largely automated educational systems. They are like a closed system in many ways. And I'll show you, I intend to sort of show you what we're doing now and then talk about where this could go. So if I share my screen for a second. Okay, 1 second. Here we go. So this is my attempt to sort of largely automate what I do. And this is an elementary maths course taken by all students that come into Imperial College. And there's 2 parts to it. The first part is probably more familiar. This is an attempt to codify the knowledge that I'm trying to transmit to students. And this is very similar to the work done by HBX. I think they also put an enormous amount of care into how to codify knowledge. So not just videoing what we do, but paying great attention to how we can present information in a way that is most accessible to our students and put in elements of learning science and learning design. So what we have here is my attempts to codify the knowledge I'm trying to impart to the students. And then what AI enables us to do is provide students to an AI tutor. So that's what you can see here. You can see down the bottom right, tutor support. And this is probably quite familiar to you now. This is a bot that's being trained on the course materials and tries to replicate the teaching style of the very best maths teacher. So we can put a question into here. How do I calculate? Okay, then you get the question, you get reference to the materials. There's 2 interesting things about this project. The first one is that it's a human plus AI approach. So students can escape from the AI should they wish to and connect to a human support network. And why is that interesting? It's because over time we build up a record of when the students want a human to support them. And by doing that, we can use that to further train the system and further enhance the AI, and also enable the humans to focus very much on the things that we do very well. So this is the state of the play now. This is what we're doing right now. But the question is, what about over time? And over time, we imagine that a lot of the workload, more of the workload will be done by the AI and less by the materials. That's the vision we have. So we reckon here you can see a very large window for the materials and a small window for the AI. The vision we have is that over time, the AI becomes larger and the materials become smaller, and the AI does more of the work. So that's what we're working on here. And the question then becomes, well, where are our schools going to sit on this spectrum? We have this spectrum from 1 to 5. Who's going to be where in 10 years? Well, I think there's a number of lenses in which you can look at this. I mean, one very common one is the Clayton Christensen disruption framework that Raj mentioned. And one thing that does is show how difficult it is for incumbents to move along this spectrum. It's very easy for schools to adopt digital assistants to support what they do already, but it's very hard for them to sort of reinvent what they do and move to those largely digitized spaces. So the working thesis is that it will be siloed projects, new incumbents, new universities that come into the far end of the spectrum, into the 4 and 5. The incumbents will start at the 1, 2, 3. and these different actors will meet somewhere in the middle. So we're not advocating a future scenario in which all schools become automated. I suspect that all numbers on this spectrum from 1 to 5 will find their place within our education ecosystem, with the incumbents doing largely the work that needs to be done by 1, 2, and 3, and new innovative skunk works or new entrants or will come into the 4 and 5. So that's the kind of vision we're looking at, and I'll close there.
David, thank you very, very much. And with that said, I want to move on to Sven. Sven from Globis, if you can tell us a little bit again, introduce you and Globis. And it seems you're also doing things very differently than the mainstream.
Thank you. Yeah, perhaps we will be that disruptor everybody's talking about. For those who are maybe unfamiliar with Globis University, we are Japan's largest business school. And yes, we do things very differently in Japan. So I hope to shed some light on what we've been doing. But before I head into what we are currently doing and the future we envision, I do want to talk a little bit about our past. After all, they are part of our DNA as an institution. So we also started with the case method. 32 years ago, our founder, Yoshito Hori, he translated Harvard business cases into Japanese, and that's how we started. Very humble beginnings, but with that startup spirit. And what was at the core of our education, and that is still unchanged, is first of all that focus on people, developing people, making sure that they develop themselves, contribute to society, but also the spreading of knowledge, right? Including those outside of our Globis network. And we do that through our forums, our conferences, our publications, but also our access to capital. So we do have our own venture capital. We've invested over $1 billion, mostly in tech startups. So we also know what's going on. We help these companies go and get their IPOs and, also disrupt society. So with that ecosystem, we started out. But in the end, education should also be about changing the life of people, not just the students, but also society. So we still equip all of our students with that kokorozashi that we call in Japanese, finding your personal mission, a very important part of our education, where people really soul search, find what they're passionate about, and make an impact. And I'm also a product of that education. I obtained my MBA 10 years ago. I found my kokorozashi, announced it to the world. And nowadays, I still teach the case method, right? Whether it be it online or in person at our various campuses. So things hasn't changed too much, but we do have some exciting developments over the last 10 years. So let's head into our present. What is Globis doing nowadays? Well, first of all, we've expanded a lot since our early beginnings in Japan. The background you see here is Brussels, because I'm stationed at Globis Europe. But, business education also has to go global to prepare for that global world where everybody will be working from, but also in terms of technology. So in the last decade, we really focused a lot on tech in business, starting off with our very first online MBA, which was 100% live. It was the first one in Asia to be 100% real time. This, of course, helped us as well. During the pandemic, within just 3 days, we shifted all our on-campus classes online, thanks to that early investment. But also, we started our own learning platforms. We have over 300,000 users on our Globis Unlimited platforms, also engaging with our video contents and quizzes. And then in 2017, we established our AI Management Education Research Institute, short GAIMEDI. So this also came after, I don't know if you're familiar with the game of Go. AlphaGo came in, right, and do deep learning techniques. They were able to, defeat the Go master. So really it intrigued us because our founder is a big fan of Go. So we researched a lot about AI. And we already got our first patent in 2021 with Guidus, which is AI for document evaluation. And then last year, as we saw the introduction of ChatGPT APIs, we also introduced this in our Nano MBA courses. So just like Imperial College, you would get real-time feedback from these AI tutors in line with the contents that they're covering. So as you could see, quite a shift from where we were traditionally heading to. So what do we focus on when it comes to our AI institute? Well, first of all, we have a lot of learning data. We have millions of individuals who have studied with us. So we gather that data, accumulate it, visualize it, but also analyze it and evaluate it. Furthermore, we also look at learning processes and teaching methods. How can these be enhanced by AI? And finally, as well, we are a school, but we're also a business, right? So how can we use AI to provide high quality and labor-saving tasks? And there's many areas. Nowadays, we also use generative AI. So let's talk a little bit about the future, where we are headed. I recently had a good discussion with our researchers at the Institute, and it seems we're looking very carefully into the AI-driven case metaverse. As Ithai mentioned as well, we're at a convergence of technologies nowadays. Generative AI meets VR, right? So can we make that experience much more immersive? Can we make these avatars more human-like looking, but also how can we have a bigger impact on society through our learning? Can we make it more accessible? Can we make it more personalized? So these are some of the things we're looking into. And we do see students do have their preferences, right? Not everybody wants to study online. Not everybody wants to put on a VR headset. So we still imagine a future where there is still traditional learning. After all, these in-person events do help with deeper bonding. It strengthens human relations, and that's necessary in the world of business. You need to network, you need to partner up with people, you need to develop those soft skills, right? That are sometimes very difficult to do online. But we also foresee a future where there'll be blended approaches, where AI enhances the current education, right? So we might have a mix of humans interacting with AI students or AI lecturers interacting with human students. So we see a whole mix here, but this could also add an extra layer of diversity, right? What if you're in a class full of people like yourselves, right? How can we create maybe AI avatars representing other countries, right? Other industries. So I do believe this is a world that we're heading into. And as you know, Japan, right, with a shrinking population, we are also looking more at robots and AI applications to fill that gap. And then there might be students who want to be fully immersed in AI, right? Where they would only interact with AI-driven students, AI lecturers, AI professors, right? Once again, this can make it more accessible to those who cannot physically go to any campus or join that prestigious network, right? But it also allows for greater flexibility, personalization. But then again, can we really have that soul-searching experience, right? Can they really develop those soft skills? Those are matters we're currently looking into. So I still have a lot of questions. I love VR. I use it every day. I also like the case method. I also like meeting my students in person. So where are we headed? I think there will be elements of these technologies we mentioned in this today's session. But yeah, there's a lot of things we need to look about, right? Copyright, plagiarism, right? Are students still thinking for themselves? Are they generating strategies that look alike because they have the same input, right? So these are some of the questions I have and look forward to discussing as well. So that's it from Globis. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. This has been really fascinating. And I think you've given me a real way to kind of go back to our panelists. I know that we are really running out of time, so I'll ask them for a very short question. Isabelle, maybe I can start with you. Also as the dean in the room. If I now move 10 years into the future, and now I'm coming to Carnegie Mellon, I'm coming to Tepper, what am I going to find 10 years from now? How is business education going to look like when I arrive there 10 years from today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ithai. So obviously it's incredibly difficult to respond to that question, but I'd like to take an example, and that's building actually on Raj discussion about the future of work. We're seeing more and more companies being completely online with no offices, but having these offsites to build culture, network within their company. And that's something that we're seeing that is incredibly important when we're thinking about the future of work. I'd like to draw a parallel with the future of education and maybe how we thinking ourselves, we have an online hybrid MBA program. And one piece that is incredibly important for us is to bring all of our students to campus. And we do that very frequently. So they come once a semester, they meet with their professors, they interact with each other, they're building the community that they need to build in person. And then they go on and take their courses online. But when they do that, they know each other and they already have these personal relationships. So I would speculate, because it's just a speculation, that this is a model that makes a lot of sense for business schools and for universities in general. And I think thinking about hybrid models is probably the way to go.
Thank you very much. So Raj, how do you see this? 10 years from now, will I be able to step into your classroom and still hear you lecture, or it will just be AI teaching AI?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, but if I may, I would just quickly echo what Isabelle said. I completely agree. And the way I thought about this is, we have successfully now challenged in the context of companies the idea that everyone has to go to the office 5 days a week. I think the parallel in our world is challenging the idea that students have to go to a campus 365 days straight up, like a 1-year program, or 600 days for a 2-year program. And I think we'll see a lot of innovation in how and where and when the in-person time will be structured. And I won't be surprised if instead of having a large global campus, we have like a series of retreats around the world, very much like what INSEAD is doing, Ithai, with 3 campuses. And people just travel between campuses, and the rest of the time they're home.
Thank you. David? Now you are on mute.
I think this is a really interesting question. So the AI tutor I showed is a startup called Tutello, Tutello. And Tutello is building a team in London, and a team that's working together. And after a few years of hybrid and remote working, the productivity we're witnessing is quite astonishing. So I thought I had a firm view on this question, and I was very much in the world that Raj described. But having recently witnessed what happens when everyone meets face to face all day, I'm now a bit confused as to the answer. And I guess the answer is there'll be a spectrum, and every mode will find its place.
So David, thank you. I would actually, we are out of time, but I must ask you the last question before I actually move the conversation back to Paul. I know that you've been involved in the past also in forming alliances between different business schools and partnerships and cooperation, with the belief that together we might be actually stronger in terms of facing all of these changes. Is there any message you can send us? Because part of what we are trying to do here today is to bring us together. Do you see how is the organization, the governance of the future is going to look in terms of business schools? Are we going to continue and work independently, or come together given the major changes that are occurring in this industry? What is your forecast?
I mean, my view is I think everyone on this call wants to make a difference. We want to make an impact. We have views about how the future should be, and we want to move towards that future. We want to make a difference. And what I've seen is that through collaboration, we move much faster and we impact far more students. Of course, there's a delicate balance there because we are competing at the same time, but on innovative projects, working together can accelerate everyone's efforts and result in far more impact. So there you go. I support your initiative, Ithai.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for the panelists. Thank you very much for SMS. Thank you very much for everyone who have joined us. And Paul, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Ithai, and panelists and the SMS office